Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House. It's also something else today, but we'll get into that in a second. Let me introduce, as always, Mr. Martin Popoff. What's going on, Martin?
Yes, morning, sir. Well, just hanging out, looking forward to this one as well. And hearts go out to the people of Jasper, Alberta, for all their fires they're going through. But it's warm and it's cool and rainy here. But yeah, just basically a whole town burned down
Yeah, it's
out
never
in
good.
Alberta. Yeah, nuts.
Never good. Hot, dry weather, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, no good. No
yeah.
good. Well, yes, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who lives over there, and hopefully they get through this mostly unscathed, and it doesn't last all too long because we know past experiences, some of these wildfires could go on for weeks and months at a time. So
Yep,
hopefully that's not the
absolutely.
case. So we'll see. So as I mentioned before, we're not only is this Friday morning at the Funhouse, our normal Friday morning show, but we're also kind of impersonating another show that we've done on the channel, but haven't done in quite a while. Top 10 songs. You guys remember Top 10 songs? Who's watching has been around on the channel long enough that remembers Top 10 songs was a regular theme show that we did all the time till I guess we kind of ran out of bands to do Top 10 songs on. And I think maybe, I kind of felt like the whole concept was kind of getting a little tired after a while. But Martin and I were talking last week, and Martin's like, have we ever ranked the songs of Golden Earring? And I'm like, we have not. We've talked about their albums here and there, not in a long time. Quite frankly, this is a band we don't talk about enough on the channel. But when we were doing top 10 songs regularly here on SOT, we never covered Golden Earring. So, of course, the great Dutch band who Martin has been around for a long time. And as we were talking off camera, has a lot of kind of eras. And a lot, their style of their music has changed drastically from era to era to era. So Martin and I have gone through their discography and we've each picked out our 10 favorite songs. And as we were saying, we have a feeling you're going to hear a lot of different songs in today's show and not a lot of overlap. So, but we'll see. Anything to say about Golden Earring before we jump into the ranking?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a strange relationship with this band. Take a look at this. So this is look at that cursive. Look at the lean in that cursive.
Wow.
So this is my notes that I had from an English class, probably 1983 or 1984. And I actually did a big long essay on the lyrics of Golden Earring, believe it or not. Just to read you a little bit of this. What does it say? Golden Earring is Dutch rock. I can barely read my own writing. Dutch rock group that brilliantly utilizes many black comic techniques, more reminiscent of the subtle but horrifying deception of Melville's The Confidence Man and the flashy, heavy laden direct depiction of the grotesque Heller's Catch 22 or Nathaniel West's Miss Lonely Hearts. Insights and indeed problems are discernible. The obvious and foremost problem is the credibility in comparing modern lyrics or modern music from the classic literary works. But look at this thing. Look at the crossouts and stuff. That's how you used to write in the old days, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Not on the computer with just backing over stuff. So English 391. So weird, possibly the first rock journalism that I ever did, kind of thing. So I've always loved this band. They started in 1961, which is just bizarre to me. It's a little bit like that Scorpion situation, right? Where you've got them starting in like 64. Reminds me a little bit of when you talk to Lemmy and he'd talk about how he was there for the birth of rock and roll, kind of thing, right? So can you talk for a sec, Pete? I just want to make sure I haven't lost your audio again.
Yeah, I haven't said
Okay,
anything.
there you are. Good. Sorry. Yeah, I've got a loose connection in the back, but yeah, it's funny, and they go through these phases of like psychedelia, well, pop, and then
Top first, yeah.
psychedelia, and then they're like proto metal, and then they're kind of hanging out in this weird sort of wishbone ash zone of just wishbone ash budgie, a little bit like they could be a little jazzy, proggy, long songs. They go through that sort of period, and they go kind of through the period that I love later on. And this is a band people have asked me, write a book on these guys,
I
right?
was just going to say,
Yeah.
when are we going to get that Golden Earring book?
I know. But the funny thing is, getting to the age I'm at and not having a single Golden Earring interview ever. I never talked to those guys. So it's like I'm way behind the eight ball. That's one of my main excuses for when people say, why don't you write a book on those guys? It's like, well, it'd be nice to have 15 interviews by this point and all this contact and talk to them again. But yeah, they've just like drifted through my life as a band that I listened to, and now I think they're basically retired. They should be by now if they're not. I think there's some health problems in the band as well. Their last album goes all the way back. Hard to believe they got an album called Tits and Ass. 2012 is their last album. Crazy, right? And then the one before that's called Millbrook, USA. Paradise in Distress. So yeah, it's been a long time. That's like 14 years now since the last album kind of thing. So maybe they're not coming back. So yeah, we've got a top 10, and all of mine do lean into sort of a bunch of albums in a row. And I think what you're going to see here with this episode is like that episode we had where we talked about how our tastes in music, you're like an older soul than me kind of thing. Even though you're a bit younger, you lean towards that mid 70s to early 70s, and I lean towards that late 70s into the 80s,
early 80s
for a lot of bands, and definitely with this band. And so to kick it off, I'm going to start with the 1984 album, February 24th, 1984, NEWS. Very cool album cover. I always like that. Like the back cover too. It's got kind of a cool theme. That actually reminds me of, what does that remind you of? Do you recognize what that might, AC/DC High Voltage, right?
Oh yeah, you'd say that. Yeah.
The briefs from school and them getting kicked out of school and stuff. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool on the back. So NEW, it's NEWS. Although on the cover it says North, East, West, South, but it's known as that's funny. Typical rock and roll, right? One title on the front and a different title on the spine.
Of course, why not?
Yeah, sure. The spine just says N.E.W.S. So yeah, Clear Night.
Otherwise known as the News album, right?
Yeah. Exactly. 3 titles, right? So I'm going to go with the opening track on here, Clear Night Moonlight, which is kind of like a tough rocker. What I love about this album, one of my favorite Golden Earring albums, and I did an entire History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast episode on this, the idea of electronic drums that sound good. And I just thought they ended up with a really tough, cool, edgy, quite dated, really, but missing some of the things that really drive you crazy about dated drum sounds. But they have this big, booming 80s drum sound on this album, and then it continues on through the whole 1986, and then they even retain it on this one here, Keeper of the Flame, 89. This actually has some really good songs that I almost put in your circles. Say My Prayer.
I always love that album. That album cover is great.
Which one? This one?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, eh?
I like how it's got this kind of like 3-dimensional feel to it. It's very cool.
Yeah. And the back's kind of cool too.
Yep.
They're all naked on the back. Yeah, that to me looks a little bit like the back of Crocus Headhunter. Right? You get half a face. Just think about this. You get half a face here, and they're naked. On Crocus Headhunter, you get half a face, but the other half is a skull, right?
Yep.
You're just all in profile. But anyways, but Clear Night Moonlight has. So the funny thing about this song, I almost didn't put it on my list because one thing that bothers me about a lot of Golden Earring songs is they make melodic choices or chord change choices that I don't like very much, that are not very melodic. And that kind of rules out a lot of their songs for me. And this one actually does that. This one actually has kind of like a single chord feel to the verses. Actually, even the chorus, come to think of it, is a bit like that. And then it's left to the vocal melody to provide the melody, right? It's a pretty cool concept when you hear these vocalists talk about, I write the melodies in these songs. I just saw the Netflix doc on Robbie Williams. Wow, that was so cool. I mean, I don't like his music, but it was a great doc, right? But he talks about, when people would give him stick for not writing the music. He's got this guy named Guy Chambers who writes the music. He would say, I write the lyrics and I write the melodies. So, he doesn't even say vocal melodies. He just says melodies, right? Melodies. Yeah, and so yeah, Barry Hayes got amazing job of that. So that's my first choice. My second choice is Enough Is Enough, also from this album, and that one is actually uh, a little more hard rock, heavy metal. It's a little more up tempo, and it actually still does that thing where the verse is very like one single minded, but then the chorus injects some melody, and it's got some really cool sounding kind of like watery reverby guitar to it as well, and really cool lyrics like pick up the telephone, start investigating. That Cuban girl with the Castro impersonation. I've been checking around with the revolutionary. That kind of thing, right? But yeah, it's a good kind of heavier, groovy song on this. So that is my 10 and my 9.
Cool. All right. So as Martin mentioned, we are kind of at different ends of the spectrum when it comes to some of our favorite stuff from this band. And I will say, if you're someone new to Golden Earring, and you might go and investigate some of these songs that we're going to pick today, and you might think and say to yourself, is this the same band? Because there's a big difference in sound between probably some of the stuff that I'm going to pick and what Martin's going to pick. And it's all good. It's just, it depends on what you like. But man, this band really changed a lot over the span of like a decade or, 15 years or so. So I'm going to go with number 10. I'm going to go to an album called 8 Miles High. And the song is called
Way back.
Every Day's Torture. So what's really cool about this song, and they actually did this a few times, more than a few times early in their career. This is basically Golden Earring doing a Doom song before like really Doom was a thing. So we're looking, I mean, this is 1969. So
Yeah.
this predates Black Sabbath, right? I mean, this is like has these haunting kind of tortured vocals, big, crushing, heavy riffs kind of in the background. There's like menacing riffs. Great lead guitar. Martin mentioned at the top of the show how much this band participated in like the psychedelic era. There's still quite a bit of that on this album. I think if you like kind of the creepier, slower, doomier Doors stuff, or certainly Iron Butterfly, you would really like this a lot. I love the vocals on this. It's just like I could just, I could just hear it in the back of my head right now. I was listening to it before we started taping today. And it's an interesting album because you got a couple like kind of songs like this, and then takes a lot of balls, Martin, to release an album titled after a cover song by the Byrds, and then the cover version is 19 minutes long. So it's like I always thought like this album is really interesting because the fact that they even went there is kind of cool. But so yeah, so that's my first track. It's called Every Day's Torture from 8 Miles High. And next up, we're going to go to their self-titled album, which came out next. So that was 1970. Here's the album cover. Now, unfortunately, some of these album covers early on are not as cool looking as what Martin showed you before. These are just they're a lot of pictures of the band and
Vinyl here.
whatnot. Yeah, there we go. Very
Very
cool. I
cool.
mean, this it's like a Sabbath, right? It looks like
Yeah, and Mad Shadows, Mark the Hoople kind of thing, right?
yeah, absolutely. I always like the gatefold on that. Very, very cool. So the song off of Golden Earring, which is one of my favorite albums by them, is called "The Wall of Dolls." So again, Martin mentioned this whole concept of Golden Earring participating in this proto metal scene, and there is a lot of proto metal tracks on some of these early albums. This is one of them. I mean, this is just early heavy rock. It's full of these kind of like swirly psychedelic elements, which I think is really cool. Again, a big part of their sound early on. Really great guitar tones and textures. I mean, this dude is a really, really good guitar player. I always really liked him. There's lots of atmosphere, and it's got just this wicked solo in the second half of the song that kind of takes you out and then fades out. Very, very cool. I like one of the things I like so much about this early music is that a lot of it's heavy. A lot of it's got that psych element, and there's a lot of prog going on these albums too as well. These guys mesh those kind of three styles really, really well. And there's a lot of great tunes on here. It was hard. I knew I had to pick one from this album, at least one, and that one was an easy choice. So yeah, the Wall of Dolls, very, very cool, very different. Again, you listen to Wall of Dolls, and you listen to anything past the '80s, you'd probably say to yourself, this is the same band because we're talking completely different style here. So yeah, those are my first two picks.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at my old don't order this from me, by the way. I ran out of it. I may not get anymore, but the 70s book. And I think I'm out of the 80s as well, but I got the 90s and the 2000s. But I rated all this stuff in here very highly. And yeah, this is an album that we all forget about when we talk about the origins of metal, right? And
A
it should
100%. Yep.
it should be in there a lot more, right? And I always put this this album to me is in a trio of albums with 7 tiers and together. So you go 71 album, 72 album, and then Moontan. It's funny, Moontan, it's their only gold album out of the entire career, right? So it reminds you a little bit of Nazareth having a platinum album actually with Hair of the Dog, no other
And
certification.
nothing else. Yeah.
Thin Lizzy having a gold album with Jailbreak, no other certifications,
Yeah.
right? Sweet having a gold album with Desolation Boulevard, no other certifications. So yeah, very very weird, eh? And it went gold in Canada as well. And then we know with Cut they almost kind of got there, right?
Yep.
And your clue to that is that it went gold in Canada, right? So if something goes gold in Canada, you know it got really close in the States as well, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of thing. But and the other thing I wanted to comment on is you think of that 8 Miles High album with a 19-minute 8 Miles High, and it reminds you of UFO 2 Flying, right?
A little bit.
Just having that weirdness to it like that.
They like
So what's that?
I said they like to jam early on. It's amazing
Yeah.
how many songs had lots of jamming happening. So
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so my number 8, I go to where I just buried it here somewhere. My number 8, I go to the title track from Grab It for a Second. This is an absolutely amazing album. Quite tough, quite heavy, well recorded. You mentioned the phases that they went through, and you think of the electronic drums, and this doesn't line up perfectly, but it does remind me a little bit of the same kinds of career flows that you get with a band like Uriah Heep or even Rush as you move through time, right? It's interesting. But at this point, this Grab It for a Second, the title track is really dark of chord changes, and it's got this sort of funky thing going throughout it as well. But the rhythm section is so heavy on it, it's just really cool, like this grinding bass and drum sort of groove. It's got this payoff of like a warm chorus, which takes you to some new chords. But generally, I don't like anything with funk chords in it, or even that dark sort of Santana-ish Latin kind of moody chord sequences, right? And this is a little bit like that, but it reminds me of that essay, or why I wrote that essay back in university. It's got they do have this malevolent quality to a lot of these songs, and you think of the Hypnosis album covers, like To the Hilt, right? They have that whole essay was about, I guess it was a class on black humor or black comedy, right? And so they have that to them. They got a real edge to them, sort of thing. And then it's back to for my number 7, it's back to this album for It's Over Now, the last song on it. And at this point, what they do is they sort of chuck all that heavy drum sound thing, and it's acoustically driven. It's just a beautiful kind of like acoustic up-tempo pop tune. They're really good at love songs, these guys, right? So yeah, that is my it's got this the drumming, Caesar, how do you pronounce it? Zwiderwick. I'm sure I got that completely wrong, but he does this cool little hi-hat thing in there, which is kind of cool. It's got this the other thing this band is good at is just songcraft, period. It's got this really cool pre-chorus that goes into a great chorus, right? That's probably a show we could do at some point. It's like songs that we don't really remember or realize why they're great, but they're great because they've got both an amazing pre-chorus and an amazing
chorus,
right?
Yeah,
which is cool to see. So that is my my 8 and my 7.
Cool. All right, my 8. We're gonna go to the Moontan album, which is this one right here. Whoop. And didn't this have different covers, I think?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So this, as Martin mentioned, this is from 1973. So here is where their sound is starting to change a little bit. Maybe some of that proto metal, heavy rock stuff of the couple albums that came before it, now giving way to some prog and a little bit of pop songcraft kind of creeping in as well. The song I picked from here is a song that kind of does a little bit of everything, like this band was doing at the time. It's called Vanilla Queen. and it's the final song on here, 9 minutes and 16 seconds. Very much a prog rock track. But what I really like about it, Martin mentioned Wishbone Ash earlier on in the episode. So these guys were starting to do this kind of um, multi-track twin guitar harmony thing, blending lush acoustic guitars with big electric guitars. They do that really, really well on this album. And especially in the middle of this song. It's 9 minutes. There's a lot going on in this song. The middle of this song totally sounds like it could have come off of like the first like two or three Wishbone Ash albums. Really cool. Love the chorus. Very, very memorable. And again, psychedelia, folk, hard rock, prog, all mixing together. Not a boring. I mean, some bands don't know how to do long songs. These guys do long songs really, really well. I think this one builds really good, and it's a really cool choice for a closer. And interestingly enough, they've got a couple of long songs on here. Most of this album is made up of longer songs, like 6 to 9 minutes long. But yeah, including another song that we'll talk about. They'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, the Vanilla Queen is my number 8, and number 7. We're going to go to the Together album, which showed before. And this is one of those kind of trio of the heavy rock albums. And I'm choosing Brother Wind. Again, another long one. So this one is 7:54. Again, I'm going to talk about Wishbone Ash here because I love the way they're kind of weaving these twin guitar harmonies, even though you got one guitar player here doing all sorts of stuff. But you got heavy chugging riffs, the harmonies, spacey organ. They used a lot of organ early on. If you're a fan of like Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, those sort of bands, a lot of that going on in some of these earlier albums. Flute. The one thing I don't like about this song, it's well played, but there's a lot of drum solos in this track. So they probably could have trimmed this by about 2 minutes or so and took out some of the excess drum soloing. But otherwise, I absolutely love, especially the first half of the song. It's just so good. Good, riffy, jammy song. Again, it's got those psychedelic flavors, those prog flavors. Love when the flute comes in. You'll hear flute, you'll hear sax on some of these earlier albums quite a bit, which I think is a nice touch. It's almost like the band is saying, well, we're not going to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into one style of music. So we've got all these people playing all these different instruments, and we're going to drop this in, we're going to drop that in to give you a little flavor of this, a little flavor of that. I think that's really cool. That's why this band, I think, was always so hard to kind of classify because they did a little bit of everything. They did it all really, really well. So yeah, Brother Wind is from the very cool Together album. That's my number 7.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned the flute. I can't stand flute
I
in
know you don't.
rock as well, right? It's like I say, the only way you can improve Jethro Tull is to remove the flute from the band, right? Uh, but yeah, I was watching some videos and you see Barry Hayes standing there with a sax, right, in a video, right, and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's possibly indicative of this interesting thing about this band where they happen to be Dutch, right? They're from Netherlands. Yet thankfully, so on the negative side, as usual, although they get around this pretty good, and that's why we love Golden Earring, but they don't sound like they're behind the times or outside of the Western tradition, and they don't know what they're doing, sort of thing. And that's the whole Benelux area and Denmark and Sweden. We're never like that, anyways. They always got rock and roll and did it properly, right?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So they were never that. And the other thing they were never is Barry Hay, like, just never. I mean, the lyrics are great, the vocals are great. It doesn't sound like a Dutch guy's. I don't even know where he's from, kind of thing. Maybe I don't know why his English is so good. I think he was born in Pakistan or India or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know.
Yeah, anyways, there's a history of the band. But okay, so my number 6 is Moving Down Life from Grab It for a Second. So this is they did this in the mid and early 70s as well, where they had a little bit of Stonesy Mott the Hoople quality sometimes, right? And then Moving Down Life from here is where, to my mind, it's 1978. They're kind of perfecting it. The production is great. The songcraft is there. They keep the songs shorter, kind of thing. And it's just got this great harmony vocal in it, but it's almost like just a really good up tempo, kind of passionate sounding, emotive kind of boogie rock, right? Great guitar licks in it. Love the musical break and then the snare fills. And that's where this lick comes in. There's this cool, it's almost like they have a little bit of they can put in a little bit of like Dave Edmunds rock pile pub rock into what they do at times, but they have these all these cool little parts, and this is just a little break with some nice fills. Again, really tasteful drumming in this band, never over the top, but he just plays some really nice things. Then I'm going to go to the Cut album, 1982. And I remember when, kind of a topical album cover these days with that picture. There's an iconic picture we've seen in the last little while that looks a bit like that, right? But yeah, I remember when this album came out and Golden Earring was kind of all the rage, right? Because it had Twilight Zone on it. It was a big video. MTV had just started. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when the odd time here and there when the Tubes were all the rage, right? I remember the Tubes. Oh, everybody's talking about the Tubes. Everybody's loving the Tubes. They never even got a gold album out of all that stuff. It blows my mind that they have no gold albums. And then this doesn't go gold, which is kind of surprising. Great band shot on the back. I guess that reminds me a little bit of maybe a little Van Halen OU812 or 5150 kind of look to that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, really cool album cover. Don't like the text at the top, but did I even mention the song yet? Lost and Found. So Lost and Found on here starts side 2, and it's kind of like one of their dark, cool ballads. It's like a really mopey sort of, negative kind of love song, things gone bad sort of thing, gone bad sort of thing. And it's got a kind of driving beat, good vocal on it. And just this sort of like watery arpeggiated guitar that's driving the song. So yeah, even you look at a lot of this. I mean, they could have, like Twilight Zone does have that little bit of a dancey beat. Devil Made Me Do It is up tempo, but yeah, this is not particularly a commercial album. Love, yeah, four tracks on each side, very cool. Yeah, good album, and yeah, surprised it didn't go gold. And that is my 6 and my 5.
Yeah, that is a good album. Very solid record. All right, my number 6, we're going to go to the Seven Tears album. Another shot of them on the front, just kind of hanging out here. And quite possibly could be my favorite album by them, 1971. The song is The Road Swallowed Her Name. Big, heavy. I honestly, Martin, I would compare the riffing in this song to as heavy as what Budgie or Black Sabbath were doing at the time. They didn't do it in every song on these albums, but occasionally they would pop in these big lumbering riffs, right? It more reminds me of Budgie than Sabbath. And maybe any other comparison, I would say, maybe think of like Cactus from here in the States, but I would think a little bit heavier. Just a killer track. It's 4 minutes long, does not longer than it needs to be. And it's just got that kind of like heavy, bluesy, just dirgy kind of element to it. Just really love it. And I love the guitar tones on this album. Just so good. I'm going to talk more about this album in a bit, but that's one of my favorites from this album. Again, it's The Road Swallowed Her Name. And then we're going to go to number, what's next? 6?
I think five is your next, I think. You're doing 6 and 5, right?
Okay, yeah, you got it. All right. I just find the right album here. So I'm going to go back to the Golden Earring album here, which is this one. And the song is I'm Going to Send My Pigeons to the Sky. What I love about this one, they had this way of creating kind of like spooky soundscapes in some of their early stuff. Think of like kind of like blood rock a little bit. Again, The Doors, Vanilla Fudge, Deep Purple, Heap, and that sort of thing. This is just good early 70s spooky heavy rock, great chorus, and the vocal harmonies are absolutely killer on here. I mean, these guys could write some really good choruses early on, even within these kind of like heavy, dirgy, spooky kind of tracks. And gotta love the big long title, right? I'm gonna send my pigeons to the sky. What the hell is that all about? Who cares? The chorus is great. Really good stuff. A little bit of organ in here as well, but the guitar work really shines, and the vocals. Just excellent track. And this one also probably about 6 minutes long. So it's not that short, not too long, but just gives you a little bit of all this kind of like early 70s heavy rock stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna send my pigeons to the sky from the great Golden Earring album.
Nice. Okay, so my number 4, I'm going to the Prisoners of the Night album, Now, this is what the European version is called. The American version, I believe, it has the exact same cover, but it's called Long Blonde Animal. There's a picture of the band on the back. And so this is 1980. It's possibly my favorite Golden Earring album. And the title track from this is just the most irresistible, cool, poppy, hooky, up tempo, inventive, arpeggiated guitar riff, almost like, again, pub rock, a little bit Stonesy. It's got some sort of four on the floor feel to it, which sometimes works. I'm usually not a fan of that, but yeah, love the breakdown on this as well, where it's got this cool like hi-hat thing. It's got a little bit of rockabilly. It reminds me a little bit about it's kind of like the Cool When They Shrunk the Boogie version of Foghat or Status Quo as well. But it's just such a interesting way that like the verse goes along to this really cool arpeggiated and the vocal melody kind of goes along with it as well. It's just kind of like a driving, really interesting, inventive kind of pop song. And then number 3, I'm going back to the NEWS album for When the Lady Smiles. This is an absolute masterpiece of 80s tones put together with great songwriting. You know, it almost feels like this is a lesson that Rush could have learned even better. Like to combine all this stuff and to make something that is quite accessible. It's just it sounds heavy. The drums are just kind of crushing on it, but it's still 80s sounding. It's got some interesting, again, watery, reverby guitar stuff going on. It's got some great drum fills. It's got this simple guitar solo that kind of goes to a new melodic place. There's a video of it, and it is like really kind of like there's this nun and he's like attacking this nun on the subway, and yeah, it just would not fly today. I think they've got a few videos and lyrics that would not fly today, but it's got this crazy thing where and like the perpetrator, this predator, this Barry, who's Barry Hay is playing, he eventually gets operated on and they take out the chunk of his brain that's causing him to do this, and the doctor tosses it, and a dog, I think he catches it in his mouth and eats this little part of his brain. It's a wild video, right? It's got a whole long opening part that's got no music, like it's one of those conceptual things, so it's a whole story thing. And I read on Wiki, I couldn't find any proof of this. Maybe it was a joke, but apparently somehow, you know how politicians glom onto a song and they use it as their intro music and stuff like that at rallies or whatever. Apparently Hillary Clinton ended up with this song somehow.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not true, but it was a bit of a hit. Really, really cool song. It was the biggest song from this album. I don't think this album got close to gold at all. Let's see. Did I do 2 there? Yeah, I did. That was my 4 and my number 3. There you go.
Ooh, a lot of play from that album, huh? I guess we know why. All right, my number 4. I'm going to go to their classic song from Moontan, Radar Love. You know, we talked about this whole way that Golden Earring does these great pre-choruses and chorus. I think this is the poster child for that. That pre-chorus is awesome. It gets you primed for the chorus. It's like boom, boom. Everybody remembers both. Just so good. I always like the really dark vibe of this song. And, you know, it's just over 6 minutes long when you really think about it. This is probably one of those rare, lengthy, I mean, we're talking, what was this, 1973, right? One of those lengthy singles that actually, you know, you really can't cut anything out of. And it's got a dark vibe. Vocals are kind of telling a story throughout the whole thing. I love the way the lead guitar kind of pops in and out throughout the song, switches things up quite a bit. A lot of changes in this track. Really, really like it. And again, that pre-chorus and the chorus, just so memorable. And I always thought White Lion did a pretty damn good cover of this many, many years later, but the original is still the best. I believe on the live album, they extend this out even more, but just it's a classic track for a reason. That's my number 4, Radar Love. Number 3, I'm going to go back to the Together album, From Heaven, From Hell. Again, another one of those kind of spooky, dirgy, doomy tracks from them. Big, haunting guitar chords and vocals to kind of start the song. You get a lot of simmering organ. And what I really like about it, again, knowing what I like, it's no surprise, right? I love the big guitar and Hammond chords that come in, and it's blended with the sax and the emotional vocals. It totally gives me like this similar period Uriah Heep and Deep Purple vibes, and killer lead guitar. Just a really, really good track. Again, for folks watching who love bands like that, those, I've mentioned Budgie, I mentioned Cactus, I mentioned Purple, Heap, and Blood Rock. If you like all that stuff and really only know maybe Twilight Zone and Radar Love, definitely go investigate these early 70s albums from this band, because I think you'll be very, very surprised what you hear. It's just very, very different from the later stuff and fits in with all this kind of like proto metal, early heavy rock type stuff. So yeah, From Heaven from Hell, number 3.
Okay. So my number 2, we go to the No Promises, No Debts album from 1979. Love this album. And there you've got your picture that reminds you of the back of Rush Signals, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Kind of thing. Speaking of Rush, earlier on, yeah, no promises dash no debts. Okay, that causes complication too. See how they got that on the spine. No problem. They got it right. They did that right. So there you go. Yeah, love this album. This might be my favorite Golden Earring album. I mean, generally speaking, it's either No Promises, No Debts or Long Blonde Animal, followed by Grab It for a Second, followed by NEWS. You'd think on paper I would like Cut in there as that high, but no, it's either No Promises, No Debts or Long Blonde Animal. And from here, I love a song called D Light, D dash light. And it's really melodic. It's got this great beat with a little bit of a hiccup beat to it, sort of thing. But it's based on acoustic guitar, and yet this is another thing Golden Earring does well, is they have a good sense of dynamics and building tension. So it's it's acoustic and maybe even, like I say, a little proggy because of the beat when he's singing, but so melodic, arpeggiated sort of guitar. But then the chorus, you get a little bit of politely caranging in, distortion pedal guitar for the chorus. It's almost like it's one of these songs that has that neat thing where it's almost like vocals just over drums. Kind of idea. But yeah, really cool. And then my number 1 song for Golden Earring of all time is, again, back from the No Promises, No Debts album from July 1979, Weekend Love on here. Again, this is one of those songs. They have 2 or 3 songs. Moving Down Life's another one where it's like I imagine if I met the Rolling Stones guys, maybe one of the main things I would say to them is, please cover this song. You guys would do an amazing job of this, right? Like you sometimes think along those lines, like wouldn't it be cool if they threw Golden Earring a bone and covered 2 or 3 of their songs? I think Stones would have a massive hit with this song and possibly Moving Down Light. They just sound so really, really intellectually smart, Stonesy kind of thing. So Weekend Love is a little bit like Long Blonde Animal, where it's got kind of like a cool arpeggiated sort of riff, but it's all on acoustic guitar. So again, it's just got this amazing kind of like drive to it, and these overlapping vocals. Really cool lyrics as well. It's the drumming, like he goes to ride cymbal, and you just hear the song sort of build and build, but it's so like meticulously recorded, and such a great balance between acoustic guitar and electric guitar in it as well. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. It's just a pop song. It's just a short song. What are there here? I think there's 10 songs in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 11 songs on this album. Got a good heavy one on here too, Tiger Bay, which is really cool. But yeah, so that's my favorite Golden Earring song of all time. And again, it's down for me. It's down to this just tight, inventive, interesting, slightly rock pile, slightly Dave Edmunds kind of cool songwriting they do in this era. That's my 2 and 1.
My 2 and 1 were pretty easy. That I initially right off the bat knew these were going to be one and two, and they're to me they're kind of related. They're not from the same album, but I think my number two is kind of like the younger sibling of my number one in a weird way. I'm going to go back to Moontan once again for number two, and that's Candy's Going Bad, which has those kind of funky hard rock licks that Martin loves so much, right? And I think this song again, this is not, especially early on, this is not one of those bands that has like tons of groove. They're not that kind of band, but I think this song absolutely does. I love the vocals. The chorus is absolutely killer. It's just so memorable, so melodic, and again, it's just got these kind of funky hard rock riffs that just kind of go throughout the track, swirling Hammond organ, and again, it's basically the precursor. It's basically related in my mind to my number one. And my number one, we're going to go back to Seven Tears, and that is She Flies on Strange Wings. Epic song. And that Martin mentioned earlier, the whole idea of the guy playing the sax, right? And this live shot when the band's playing the song. It's kind of weird looking. You got this kind of hard rock song, but it's an epic track. It's kind of psychedelic. It's kind of prog. It's kind of hard rock. It's a little bit of everything. Got these wonderful swirling keyboards going throughout the song. Absolutely stinging, ferocious lead guitar work. Screaming sax, like coming out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you got this jazzy sax, and what a great anthemic chorus. I mean, it just, if you haven't heard She Flies on Strange Wings, and you got to watch the video because the video, it's got them all out there standing outside playing, right? There's no amps or anything anywhere, but it's just very, very cool. Such a classic track. And again, 7 minutes and something change, right? And they were releasing some of this stuff as singles back then. And, nobody else was doing these kind of long tracks that the radio was like, all right, I guess we'll play it. But yeah, for me, this was an easy number one, and but it's very accessible. It's got all these little elements and they stretch out a bit, but still very, very catchy song. So yeah, She Flies on Strange Wings from Seven Tears.
That's great. I was crossing my fingers that your number one wouldn't be Twilight Zone, because what we did here was, it was just completely wild. Get this. So we almost did like two episodes, right? Like you mentioned earlier, talking about two separate bands, right? So every single one of yours was from one era of the band. I would call it the second era of the band, with
Pretty
your
much.
8 Miles High going back a little bit. But you were all like 1969 through, I think you stopped at Moontan. I don't think you had anything from Switch to the Hilt or Contraband on
Nope.
there, right?
Nope.
So you went 69 to 73. So and then every single one of mine was from 78 through 84. So we didn't touch at all. So no overlap. And then we didn't touch on their early era, which would be Just Earrings, Winter Harvest, Miracle Mirror, and On the Double. So 65 through early 69. And then none of us touched on anything beginning with 1986 as the whole, all the way up to 2012. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 albums they had in there. So that's crazy. So 4 eras of the band. We covered 2 completely separately, skipped era 1 and skipped era 4. Oh, and then why don't you go in?
Yeah, and I had a feeling we were going to do that. I mean, and again, yeah, I mean, I like all the golden earring stuff, but my favorite stuff is from that little chunk right there at the late '60s and the first half of the '70s. But yeah, it's cool. You're right. We almost got like 2 parts out of this, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a couple of honorable mentions. I know you had some as well, but
Yep.
I was leaning towards Roxanne from Grab It for a Second, and Tempting from Grab It for a Second. Tempting is a pretty good heavy metal song from them, fast, a little boogie rock in there as well. And like I say, Keeper of the Flame. This carries on from the whole, in that they seem to love that drum sound that they kind of came up with on NEWS. It went right through the whole. The whole is like, what a cool title, number one, and So Golden Earring. And then the cover is just a black cover with like golden earring, the hole at the top. But yeah, this has a couple of great songs as well. Like I say, near the end of it, Say My Prayer and Distant Love. And then also very related to this idea of When the Lady Smiles, and for some reason me liking that drum sound that they came up with. They had this live album with, again, terrible type at the top, same type
Yeah, it's awful.
as Cut. and then other type, and yeah, the whole cover isn't that great, right?
No.
And again, one of these crappy titles because it's something heavy going down up top, and then at the bottom it's live from the Twilight Zone. Anyways, they add a studio track on here called Something Heavy Going Down, and it's a big modern sort of 80s hard rocking song. Again, a little unmelodic. It's tough. It's like a less melodic version of When the Lady Smiles. So that is my other honorable mention.
Cool. All right, I want to give some love to the Hilt album because I do like that album quite a bit, and I have a couple favorites. Nomad is one of them, and Why Me is another one. Love both of those songs. Really good, very good album. From the Switch album, Love is a Rodeo. That's a really fun song. And then also some other ones. One Huge Road and Landing, both from 8 Miles High. I almost had Landing in my top. That's a good, heavy kind of bluesy, heavy rock song. And then from the Golden Earring album, Big Tree Blue Sea. The Loner from the Golden Earring album, and then I mean Moontan is just top to bottom great songs. Are You Receiving Me is another great one, and an Avalanche of Love from the Together album is another one that I was considering for my top. So, but yeah, a lot of great songs from this band. A lot of great
Yeah,
songs.
the last point I want to make is, I went through all the old albums again and the new albums again, and it's a funny thing sort of happened. It was like the old albums. This is a thing that happens with me, I suppose, and I've explained it from time to time. It's like when I'm on board with an album and I'm confident in the band's artistry and I'm like with them, I'll give songs the benefit of the doubt and they'll kind of raise in estimation. I mean, people get on me for having so many Judas Priest songs in my top 10 from Hellbent for Leather, Killing Machine, right? And it's because I'm buying into the album as a whole, right? So when I'm going through that old Golden Earring stuff, it's like I'm lacking. I'm feeling a little bit like they're from mainland Europe, right? I'm lacking the confidence in that stuff. And then when I get to the newer stuff, it's almost like, okay, well, so many music genres have gone by. They're kind of like untethered. They're sounding kind of like they're doing like all these old bands do, right? They rediscover their original kind of timeless meat and potatoes sort of sound, right? So the all the later albums kind of have just this feeling of general rock, where there's a bit of 70s, there's a bit of the 80s in it. There's just like the 90s and 2000s version of just like proper recording techniques, but nothing eccentric or weird about it. They're not making any statements with the way they record, right? And then I'm also feeling like these never connected with me in a big way. If I pick stuff from here, it's like I'm picking a song because I'm almost for the first time going, oh, that's really cool. That's cool. That's a great song. I can see this being in my favorites, but they aren't songs I played hundreds of times,
Right.
like the ones that I play all the time on my iPod and in the car from those late 70s, early 80s albums. That totally is my favorite period. So yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like you say, this is like literally like four different bands in a way, right?
Pretty much. Pretty much. Oh, as the dogs come busting in, you like they're Golden Earring fans here, right? Absolutely. Yeah, so for everybody watching, pick your top 10 favorite Golden Earring songs down in the comments below. It'll be interesting to see if we've got lots of disparity, kind of like between the two of us and what people are picking, whether they're going heavy later stuff or heavy earlier stuff. So we'll see. And tune in next time here at the Funhouse. Martin and I are preparing to do a Herculean task. We are each going to be picking our favorite 40 guitar riffs of the 70s.
Yeah.
It was originally going to be 20, and then Martin was like, "There's no way I could just pick 20." And then my initial list is like probably over 100, and I have to whittle that down to 40. It's just because you keep thinking more and more and more, and I'm thinking of stuff that I missed. So it's like, yeah,
And I even messengered you and said, no, Pete, I got to go 30. I got to go 30. I can't do 20. Right. And then it's like
then it's
20
40.
minutes later. It's no, Pete, it's 40. It's got to be 40. Right.
Well,
But
because when
it's,
we do this, it's going to be rapid fire stuff because you know how much
yeah,
you
yeah,
really
yeah,
can't talk a lot about these riffs,
yeah.
but it's just more about just mentioning the great ones. So it'll be a quick rapid fire show. So really 40 each will go pretty damn quickly. And who knows, by the time we record the show, it might be at 50. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I went through that. I've already got my picks, and it's like there's a lot of neat concepts that come up there. Like what is a riff? We'll talk about that. What is a riff versus a chord sequence in that, but I'll stop there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, other updates on your end with the podcast and the contrarians and books and things?
Not particularly. I got a trip coming up, so I've been I missed an album cover show, and I'm gonna miss another album cover show. But the last podcast was what was it about? We did that Peter. Oh yeah, it was a new wave of British heavy metal one based on how much we've been doing that. It was on the brain kind of thing. And I think my next podcast is going to be uh is was Black Sabbath a progressive metal band? Because I just had my latest Goldmine top 20 go up, and it's like the history of progressive metal in 20 albums. And it was chronological, and then a debate kind of fired up with a couple of smart buddies. Actually, 3 or 4 are in on the debate about why is there no Black Sabbath on here, kind of thing. And then typical of these debates, I go, oh, I feel a podcast episode coming on. So
that's how it works.
So I
right?
think that's what I'm going to do for my next one for History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff.
Cool. That sounds like a good one. Yeah, Black Sabbath. It's like, the origins of what we call heavy metal, but are they really heavy metal, right?
Yeah. But this is about progressive metal. Where do they fit in the progressive metal?
Progressive metal, yeah. Well, a lot of people talk about, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but yeah, some people look at, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and specifically Sabotage as, kind of the origins of progressive metal. I think you could even go back to Volume 4, where kind of some of that stuff is starting. But
what I said in that Goldmine thing, I started off with there's Hendrix in there and there's the Who in there for concept album stuff, but I think I still truly believe the first progressive metal album of all time is Rush Fly By Night.
Yeah, and if you're not totally buying into that, certainly 2112 is.
Yeah, and people, do like to bring up In the Court of Crimson King.
Yeah.
And I saw one Facebook comment. I thought this was interesting, where they said Caress of Steel is the first progressive metal album. So
I would not argue that at all. And in fact, I would say progressive. I would say if you take Bytor off of Fly By Night, right, because you have to include it because of that.
Exactly.
I would say Caress of Steel most definitely. Because
Anthem and Bytor.
Side 2 of Caress of Steel is total prog metal.
Yeah. That's an interesting one too. I'll probably end up bringing that up in the episode as well. So.
And of course, we'll get all these people commenting down below. Rush were never metal.
Yeah. Like, come on. Well, and also part of this podcast episode will be, there's elements of Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, and Led Zeppelin. People say they're progressive metal bands. In some form. I
mean, I hear a Magician's Birthday and Demons and Wizards all the time when it comes to Heep. So. I mean, I guess you could say that, right? There's elements, I also Rainbow Rising. There's elements of progressive metal there as well. Power metal, certainly. Yeah. That's a whole ball of wax right there. I'll let you tackle that one. All right, we've got coming up here on the channel in just a couple hours. We've got Ken Golden and myself with the Professor's Picks. See what's new and releasing today here on this Friday in the worlds of prog and prog metal and fusion. Tomorrow we've got the UK Connection. Simon, Stephen, and myself will be talking about our favorite and least favorite albums from Foreigner. And then George Lemmy and I will be ranking the albums of King Diamond on Sunday. So lots coming up here on the channel. Of course, Tuesdays in the prog scene, another album battle. The first 4 solo albums from those Genesis folks. We got Steve Hackett, Peter Gabriel, Michael Rutherford, and Tony Banks. We're talking about those 4 albums, their debut albums. That's coming up on Tuesday. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. We got the SOT merch link down below if you want to get yourself a Sea of Tranquility shirt or hat or some kind of cool thing to go wear out there in the wild and spread the word. So thanks in advance for all your support there. We'll see you soon here on the Fun House. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.